Is this on? I think it is on. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. How are we feeling today? Good. All right. And hello to everyone who's joining us online. Thanks for making it. We're glad to have you. And I hope to see more people in this room very shortly. But for now, let me introduce myself. My name is Arian. I'll be your MC for today. And I think we should take the next few moments to introduce ourselves, say hello, catch up after a while with the people around us before we get started with the rest of the service. So let's take a few moments to greet each other now. Okay, thank you, everyone. It's great to see some new faces here, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to catch up with everyone after the service. But for now, I'd like to ask everyone to find their seats but remain standing as we recite the family pledge. And the family pledge is a way that we commit to doing certain actions, particularly as a family centered on God, to help to achieve his ideal and his vision for the world. So today we'll be reciting Family Pledge number 5. Family Pledge number 5. Our family, the owner of Chanyeolguk, pledges to strive every day to advance the unification of the spirit world and the physical world as subject and object partners by centering on true love. And please join me in an opening prayer. Dear Heavenly Parent and true parents, good morning. We are so delighted to be able to welcome you here at Lancaster Gate for our service this Sunday. It's amazing to see new faces in the room, and I'm grateful for everyone who's joining us online and in person to worship you and to remember you and to remember what makes this community strong and how we can continue to spread our truth, our joy, our love with each other and outside of this community as well. So we are extremely grateful for everything that you give us and for everyone's time and contributions that make these services possible. And we are grateful for all the inspiration and all the love that we experience here. And I pray that today, when we're looking at traditions, we can think about why those traditions are valuable and what we can do to help rebuild traditions or maybe establish new ones. So I pray that today we can be very attentive to what you're trying to say through our sermon giver, and I pray that we can all make the most of our fellowship afterwards as well. So I'd like to report this prayer on behalf of all my brothers and sisters here. In my name, I, Isaac Fry, son of a blessed central family, are Jew. Thank you very much. Please be seated. And could we give a warm round of applause as we invite our band for the opening song?
Morning, everybody. Hope you're all well. It's great to see such wonderful, beautiful faces on this wonderful Sunday morning. And of course, hello everyone that is joining us online through Livestream. Great to see you all together again as well. Just like to introduce our band as we usually do, and I'd like to just say, if we can give a lovely round of applause to our elder brother, David Rennie, who will be leading us on guitar today. Our resident young singer in the band again, Anastasia. And of course, myself, I'm Kieran, and I will be your worship leader for today. So if we can all please rise, and we can sing our first song together, which will be Spring Song of Eden. So if we can all please rise. Come, O ye friends, to the Garden of Eden, where the spring blossoms are best, joyfully singing together our song, friends in our Eden regain. Here in the garden together we'll meet, singing new songs of joy. Come, O ye friends, to the Garden of Eden, singing new songs of delight, joyfully dancing together with songs. Friends in our Eden rejoice. Here in the garden together we'll dance, singing new songs of joy. Come, O ye friends, to the Garden of Eden, where joy and happiness reign, joyfully sharing together our love. Here in the garden of peace, come ye, oh come to the garden, my friends, singing new songs of joy. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, please be seated. Thank you, band, for the opening song. And for now, we have some local announcements up there, and then I'll also invite Auntie Naomi to share about her report yesterday. But for now, I'd like to announce that next week, our service will be at Hatch End in North London. So if you really enjoy the service today and you'd like to join us again for our next one, that's where it will be hosted. And yeah, if you'd like to contribute to services, if you want to give a sermon, or if you'd like to join the band, I'd like to volunteer in any way, maybe run a Sunday school for a week, then please get in contact with me and we can arrange something. So it's always nice to seize the opportunity, and I'm always really grateful when people put themselves forward and you can see that they would like to help out. And I think everyone can feel that as well when you give in a loving, proactive way. Okay, and then we've also got this event. I know we're not in the Czech Republic, but it's in the local announcements because I think it's quite relevant to our community. We do a lot of work in this area. So there will be a Hyojong Chombo special event taking place from March the 9th to the 10th. So if you're interested, I think you could speak to Auntie Joanna, and we can also share some information around later in the group chats if you haven't seen it or yet. And if you would like to register for that, then the deadline for payments is the 4th of March. Okay, I'd like to invite up Auntie Naomi to share about yesterday's event here at Lancaster Gate. Let's give her a round of applause.
Morning, brothers and sisters. Lovely to see you. About 3 weeks ago now, Joanna de Souza said, "Oh, we're having an event you might be interested in Lancaster Gate. It's got sewing involved." Now, for those of you who don't know, sewing is my ultimate happy place. So I said yes immediately. Anything to do with sewing, I'll jump in. It was hosted by the Women's Federation for World Peace, and a lovely young lady, and she's studying at Greenwich University, and for part of her dissertation, she had to do a presentation on what is known as period poverty. In the world, there are a lot of young women who are either stifled by their own cultures or stifled from growth by the fact that they can't afford to go out and buy what most of us take for granted for their feminine needs. So yesterday we had a workshop about that, and it was very interesting. And we learned how to make what women need, feminine pads, on a sewing machine that are reusable. And it was a lovely group. It wasn't a big group, but we all got along really well together. We ended up sharing hearts, laughing, smiling, pricking ourselves on sewing needles, and having wonderful fun. And I think the whole point about it was a lot of the people who came from other religions or other countries and could express how these things go in their countries and how it is that women are often not supported in their journey from being a child to an adolescent to a woman. And this is something we need to empower, because, as you've probably realized, without women in the world, the race would die, because who gives birth? And also we need to respect each other a lot more. And this came out yesterday, and it was a really wonderful opportunity to meet new people. And from my point of view, I met someone who used to work in Kenya with girls, and Wait has a project in Uganda called the Girl Child Project. So I talked a bit about that, and we've exchanged names and numbers, and we're going to get in contact, how we can support each other's ideas and move forwards together. She was really interested. So I felt like God used this, what appeared to be simple event, to actually network and to grow. So that's what we did yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing about that. I think it's amazing always to hear about events that are put on here at Lancaster Gate. And maybe they're a bit different and not what we're used to, but they're still very, very important and helpful and helping us to advance in different ways. So thanks for helping with that event yesterday. And I hope to hear about many more exciting initiatives if people have different ideas. We're very lucky to have Lancaster Gate as our headquarters. And so let's make the most of it. So now we'll move on to our national announcements. And here they are. So first of all, let me see, I'll take this off. Yes. So we have a 7-day Divine Principle workshop titled Principled Relationship Insight. And this will be taught by our very own Uncle William Haynes. If you aren't familiar with his style, then you're fortunate, because today he'll be giving our sermon. So if you enjoy the sermon today, you might want to join the workshop as well. And this will be starting from tomorrow, so just in time, we're hearing this announcement today. And it will be from the 26th of February to the 8th of March, from 6 to 8 o'clock each day. So maybe it's a lot to commit to, 2 hours every day, but I'm sure it'll be worth your time. And we're very grateful that Uncle William has offered this, each day, starting from tomorrow? Yeah, so a week straight. It's just confusing because February has less days.
It's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, both weeks.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So you do get a break. And and it will be delivered via Zoom. Thank you very much. It's great to have you in the room as I'm making this announcement. Okay, next we have the registrations for Family Camp, and these are now open. This will be taking place at the end of July, from the 26th to the 31st. I found out today that this will my graduation will be right in the middle of Family Camp, so let's see if I go or not. But yeah, I can highly recommend it. I think my cousins actually signed up this time. So if you'd like to go and you want to invite people, don't feel like they have to be long-time members of our community to join. Friends and family are definitely welcome. And I know my cousins joined for the first time last year, and they're coming back again. So I think that tells you everything you need to know about how they experienced it. Thank you. Okay, so this is something I'm quite excited about, actually. I'm helping to organize it. We have a high noon workshop taking place in the UK. And Janik is leading this, but he's also being supported by David Hewish, if you know him, Matthew's. And this will be taking place at Livingston House from the 22nd to the 24th of March. So if you'd like to sign up, you can arrive on the evening of the 22nd and sleep over at Livingston House. And I know that just yesterday, Benji Yama, who's one of the main coordinators of High Noon, was looking at buying tickets to come to London because he's confident that this will be a great event and that will get many people signing up. So if you'd like to find out more about what High Noon does, it's a program that tries to build a culture in which we can stand before God without any shame. So you can stand under the sun and cast no shadows, lead a life without any shadow. And I think it's a great program. I've benefited from it in the past. I can highly recommend it. Okay, so yeah, this is quite exciting to make this announcement in Lancaster Gate. So after a while, due to the COVID lockdown, we are able to reopen the bookshop here at Lancaster Gate. So that's great news, and you can buy these books in person with cash or card. And yeah, of course, not every book is going to cost the same. Maybe the prices will fluctuate. But if you're interested in buying a book, Auntie Joanna is holding up a Divine Principle. Look at that, nice and fresh. If you want to buy a fresh copy of any of these texts, or if you want to buy a new one, then we're very happy to be able to offer that at Lancaster Gate again. Okay, so for the next announcement, there will be a blessing taking place in April on the 26th. Actually, I know that that date is no longer tentative. It has been fixed. I don't know. I imagine if you were going to this blessing, you'd probably know about it already. So we can just move on, I think, to the next slide. What? What? Who's going to the blessing in April? I can see Kieran like that setup. I put a bit of thought into it. Yeah, sorry. Of course, this is big news. I'm not planning to undermine it, but yeah, I'd like to share with the community today that I'm going to the blessing in April with this lovely sister that you see up there. Her name is Alicia. She's from Utah in America. I just flew back from there yesterday, so that picture on the right was taken just before I left the airport. And yeah, I'm really excited to share this announcement. I'm very happy. But I felt like I should tell everyone today because I won't be able to help out as much with services over the next few months, and I'll probably be moving to America in the summer. So, yes, I'm very sorry to say that. I'll be very sad to see, to not be here regularly anymore. But yeah, it's the next step in my life, and I'd like to give everyone some time to plan ahead and see if anyone would like to take over from me as the coordinator for our services. If anyone likes the sound of their voice as much as I like the sound of mine, then feel free to get in contact with me and we can talk about maybe being more involved. And if anyone would like to be taught how to make Japanese curry, then don't speak to me, speak to Mr. Hayashi. Yes, so anyway, I'd like to share that information with you, and we can move on to the next announcement. So, yeah, we have some more workshops coming up in the summer. Another Divine Principle workshop. This one is 14 days taking place in Austria, and a 21-day youth pilgrimage taking place in Korea in August. So more information about those events will be coming out soon, but if you are interested, please note down these dates. You can pop them in your calendars, and yeah, I'm sure they'll be great. I think I've been asked to help out with the second one, but who knows if I'll be there. Okay, and now we have the Children's Summer Camp dates up on the screen for you. So I think we have some people in the room who might be interested in this. From what I remember, you have to be between 7, 8, and 11, 12, roughly. So if you're in primary school, Key Stage 2, I believe, then this is... Well, I see some people nodding in the crowd. Some people are very excited, and you should be, because I still remember how much fun I had on these children's summer camps growing up. So I'm excited for you to try them out for the first time if you've never been on one before. If you have been on one before, you don't need me to tell you to get excited. And that will be taking place from the 3rd to the 7th of August. Okay. And that is it for the announcements. So... I'd like to invite up the band now for our worship. Can we give them a round of applause?
Hey everyone, so we'll be singing 2 songs together to be able to prepare our hearts and minds for the message we'll receive soon afterwards. And the 2 songs we'll be singing together will be Shining Fatherland and As the Deer Panted. So if we can all please rise and together let us sing Shining Fatherland.
Sunlight beaming forth in the east from the fatherland, bringing tidings of the new world to families in the field. Let us hasten to send the news all throughout the world. Eden's glory spreading forever, the hope of joy and peace. Oh, dawn, dawn, and dawn throughout the shining fatherland tells the tidings of the rising sun that brings us light. Harvest quickly, men of the fields, hasten to harvest now. Crops are ripened and ready to bring into the heavenly host. Gather to speed the task. All will share the harvest of joy at the banquet of our Lord. Oh, dawn, dawn, and dawn throughout the shining fatherland tells the tidings of the rising sun that brings us life. When
very much, everyone. Please be seated.
Okay, thank you very much, band, for preparing us, getting us in the spirit to receive our message for today. So, as I've already advertised it as a bit of a warm-up for the workshop, I'm sure you're all very interested now to hear what Uncle William has to say. And I'd just like to introduce it by talking about tradition. This is something that's been on my mind a lot recently. And I messaged Uncle William about a week ago asking if he could talk about tradition here. And he very kindly agreed to talk about tradition on this Sunday, even though he was originally planning to talk about it last Sunday. So thank you very much for adjusting. And I'm delighted to be able to hear about it here at Lancaster Gate. And I think the value of tradition cannot be exaggerated enough. So I hope that we can all be very attentive today, think about tradition very deeply as we're listening to Uncle William's words. So let's welcome him up with a round of applause.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Joseph. Morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all here this morning, a beautiful, nice, sunny day. So, yes, as Arian said, I was going to talk about this last week, but grateful I didn't. Talked about something else. And so, yeah, it's about establishing a tradition. So I'd just like to start with some words from our founder, Father Moon, from his autobiography as a peace-loving global citizen. Tradition is the soul. There are two things we must leave our descendants when we die. One is tradition, and the other is education. A people without tradition will fail. Tradition is a soul that allows a people to continue, and a people without a soul cannot survive. The second thing of importance is education. A people will also fail if it does not educate its descendants. Education gives us the power to live with new knowledge and objectives, and through education people acquire wisdom for living. Anyone who cannot read will be ignorant, but once educated, a person will know how to use his wisdom in the world to manage his life. So that's something that struck me. I was reading it a couple of weeks ago for Holiday Cake in the morning. A people without tradition will fail. And I've been thinking about this also recently, just the last few days, the things that have been taking place in London. So what does it mean if you don't have a tradition, you'll fail? What kind of traditions are there that keep this country alive and functioning? Religious traditions. What about the traditions which exist within Parliament? Yeah. So there's this whole thing that erupted in Parliament just a few days ago, because the Speaker in the in the House of Commons, he violated the tradition or the precedent that every opposition party has 3 days in the year when it can set the topic for conversation, for discussion. It can put forward its motion to be debated and voted upon. But then, and these motions can't be amended. But what happened is that Mr. Hoyle, who happens to be a member of the Labour Party and is a Speaker, he was prevailed upon by the Labour Party to change that and to allow the Labour Party's amendment to go first. And so obviously this is a violation of the tradition, where the opposition party has its day, when it has the opportunity to have the things that it is concerned about debated. And that's why there's this big uproar and people walked out. Yeah. It's not, these are really important things which have been established by wiser people in the past, and sometimes you think, well, it's really important to do this today, even if it means overturning traditions, even if it means violating precedents. So, and then what happens is the Parliament starts to fail. Another very important principle has always been that you don't intimidate MPs. You don't, just because there's a big mob of people outside Parliament threatening MPs and wanting its will to be done, you just ignore it. Why should it pay any attention to a little mob outside Parliament just because they're going to they want to intimidate you and even threaten your life and the life of your family? Does that mean we're going to be run by a mob? Yeah. So the tradition is you don't pay any attention to that. You just shut the. I mean, there was anyway, mob rule in London. Mobs have always been around, and there's one time, I think it was in the 18th century, when there was a mob was running around the streets of London, and they're very annoyed with one particular MP, and started throwing bricks through the windows. So he just closed the shutters and said, "I'm not going to pay any attention to them. I'll just get someone to repair the windows the next day. I'm not going to change my views just because the mob says I should." And we need people like this. Otherwise, traditions of soul allows the people to continue. Otherwise, it descends into some kind of dictatorship, as happened in Germany in the 1930s, when the mob determined what was going to be the policy. Yeah. So people without a soul cannot survive. So it's very important then, all these things should be taught within schools. But English history is not taught in school today. So education helps us to understand the principles by which the world operates. So we study science, we can understand about the laws of gravity and all these different principles. This is the way the world works. But also the principles by which a society functions and works. This is the way it works. Yeah. To open up a new future, we need, on the one hand, to pass on to our descendants the tradition that has been handed down to us for over thousands of years. And on the other, to also supply them with education concerning new things. So that little phrase there struck me. The tradition handed down for thousands of years. So how old is our own spiritual community? When did our spiritual community start?
70 years ago.
Sorry?
About 70 years ago.
70 years ago? Do I have any advance on 70? 73, any advance on 73? So how can it be thousands of years then? What's Father talking about here? Tradition has passed on for thousands of years if we only date the beginning of our own spiritual community to 70 plus years ago. So what's he talking about? Sorry? History of religion. Any particular one?
But he's talking about the Islamic, history.
Right. So who are the okay, so who? Abraham's the father of faith, and who's the mother of faith? Who was his wife? Sarah. Yeah, so for some peculiar reason, in the Divine Principle book, it only focuses upon the men, father of faith. But in other traditions, the Jewish tradition, they call Abraham's the father of faith and Sarah's the mother of faith. They always put the two together. Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah and Rachel. They always put them together, husband and wife. They always recognize that the role and significance of the woman, the wife, the mother. Okay, so thousands of years. So when did Abraham and Sarah get going? Rough guess? About 4,000. So how old is our spiritual community then? 4,000 years, that's right. So that's why we spend so much time studying history in the Divine Principle. It's obviously goes prehistory, all the way back to Adam and Eve, but the beginning of turning point really of God's providence, which has continued till today, came with Abraham and Sarah. And so that's the tradition then of these thousands of years that Father is talking about. So what are these traditions then, stretching back over thousands of years? What is a tradition? Sacrifices. Okay. Do we do that still today? No, I mean, the Jews gave up making literal sacrifices 2,000 years ago. Well, they replaced it with something else. Do you know what it was? Sorry? They'd always done tithing since Abraham, the 10%, that goes back to Abraham. But because they can no longer make offerings in the temple, because the temple had been destroyed by the Romans, they thought, okay, we need to reimagine our faith. We need to think, okay, how are we going to do all this if we don't have a temple? And so they said, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to offer to God a Torah study. And so every day, instead of offering a sacrifice of a dead animal, of an animal, then they would study the Bible, the Torah. And so that then became the offering, was study, which we call Hunduke. So that's been going on now for a couple of thousand years. That's where it started. Well, even before then, it started in Babylon. And so this is something which I thought, okay, so what are these traditions? So one is study, Bible study, which we are now doing Hunduke. Any other traditions we can think of? Prayer. Yeah?
Sabbath.
Sorry?
Sabbath.
Sabbath. I'll get to that later on. Okay, these sorts of things, all right? I will come to some more. When tradition and new knowledge are appropriately integrated in our lives, they give birth to an original... That's the battery running out. Okay, thanks, Kieran. How did you know that? Okay. When tradition and new knowledge are appropriately integrated in our lives, they give birth to an original culture. Tradition and education are both important, and it's impossible to say which takes priority over the other. The wisdom to integrate the two also comes to us through education. So even though most of my focus is, much of my life has been about education, actually tradition is also as important. And if we don't have tradition, we might have all this education and workshops and lectures and all this stuff. But if we don't have a tradition, a living tradition, then our community will fail. So I think it was something I've really been thinking about a lot recently, and something we really need to pay more attention to. Okay, the battery's not going very well here, are they? Thank you. Oh, I can hear that. Okay, so this is I don't know if anybody's seen Fiddler on the Roof, but it just happened to be on television the other day, and I watched it, and I thought, yep, this little excerpt will go very well with my sermon. So, going to have some sound. Do I need to adjust something here? What? That's right, yeah, I watched it. Okay, you watched it too. Okay, well, if everybody watched it, I don't need to put it on. Are you doing... Oh, okay. You've done something to my... Shall I have another go? Let's see. Just going to try and get control of my mouse again. Okay, so from a wonderful film, came out, I think, in the 1960s, or at least the play did, called Fiddler on the Roof. And it's about this little shtetl, or little village in Russia, where Jewish people were living. This here's the farmer. Do I need to change something in my computer? Yeah. Or what do I need to change? Do I need to change something, David, or are you not sure?
I'm sure you do. You have to put the sound coming out through HTML.
Okay, so, okay, thank you. So I need to... System preferences... So it's not display, it's sound, is it?
Sound, yeah.
Where's that? So mouse, trackpad, keyboard sounds, okay. Output.
I think you might need to just skip that film. It doesn't look like it will work.
You don't think so? I can't find HTML here. No. Okay. I thought it would just be automatic, but. Right. Sorry about that. Okay, this is something I was reading from Jonathan Sacks, who was a former chief rabbi of Britain. So he said, people tend to think that what differentiates religious people from their secular counterparts is that they believe different things. And sometimes people are very focused on what do you believe. And sometimes religious people, different Christian denominations, want to know, well, how are you different? What do you believe that's different to what I believe? A huge amount of focus upon beliefs. And that the idea here is, well, religious people believe in God, and secular people don't believe in God. But Jonathan Sacks says this is less than half the story. What you believe, in one sense, is neither here nor there. It's how you live, which is really important. But that is less than half the story. People in most religions behave distinctively. They engage in ritual. They tend to do certain things, like, as we said, praying, over and over again. Ritual is a religious equivalent to deep practice. So what's deep practice? If you want to become, anybody here born playing the piano very well? Or born playing it at all? No. What do you have to do? Practice. And practice and practice, and say practice makes perfect. You have to practice over and over again. Sometimes people say, well, if you put in 10,000 hours of, practice, you become extremely good at something. Obviously, you need to have some kind of talent for it in the first place, but you need to practice. And so, prayer over and over and over and over and over again, whether you like it or not, is that form of deep practice, and it builds up over time, incrementally. It builds up. You can't become a person who has a very deep relationship with God from one day to the next. It's as one consistently prays, whether you want to or not, gradually one develops this kind of relationship. And so it's important. A thing like this, these kind of rituals. And so, prayer is a particular kind of ritual. People often pray in a ritualistic way. So Muslims, for example, they pray 5 times a day. And they bow down, and there's certain kind of ways in which they bow, and they turn their head to left and right at the end, talk to angels on one shoulder or angel on the other, and angel on the other shoulder. And it becomes a ritual. But then constant practice creates new neural pathways. So people who play computer games, has been studied. The brain of a person who spends all day long on a computer playing computer games, has been noticed that the particular neural pathways in that part of the brain become denser than other parts of the brain and become much more, and that's the way it works. So when we do something over and over again, it actually changes the structure of our brain. Yeah? When you play the piano a lot, it changes all sorts of things. So it reconfigures our character so that we are no longer the people we once were. We have engraved into our instincts the way certain strokes are engraved in the mind of tennis champions. So they spontaneously react in a certain kind of way. It's like when you're driving a car. When you first learn how to drive a car, you have to think really hard about the steering wheel, the gear stick, the brakes, other people coming. This is really exhausting. But then after a while, after you've been driving a car for a while, it all becomes automated. And you naturally and spontaneously brake. You naturally and spontaneously swerve to get out of the way of another car. You're not thinking about it. If you think about it, it's too slow. Yeah, all these things need to become automated, and that's what happens through practice. You know, the neural pathways change, so these things become just natural, become part of who we are. We have engraved into our instinct responses to circumstance. Prayer engenders gratitude. So when you start praying, the more we pray, actually, the more grateful we become about life. The more we realize how incredibly blessed we are, how incredibly fortunate we are. And because when we pray, it takes you out of your own little world and to a bigger world in which one's living. And so you become a more grateful person. Charitable giving makes us generous. We're not generous. And because you do it over and over again, something changes within ourselves. The thou shalt nots of religion teach us self-control. Ritual changes the world by changing us. So sometimes people, don't think very much of ritual. Oh, we're just doing it because it's a ritual or tradition. But actually, these are really important things in our own personal life, the life of our family, the life of our society, even the life of our country. Respecting, acknowledging, and following and understanding these traditions is extraordinarily important. But because people don't understand these traditions, like I'll often listen the last few days to the commentaries, what people were saying about what was going on in Parliament, I realised they had no understanding whatsoever of the way the world works, the way the Parliament works, the way the country works, anything about the history. They just think, oh, it's ridiculous that the MPs walked out. But actually there's a reason why they did that. They're not stupid people. There's a reason why they did the things that they did. And we need to understand that and respect that. Otherwise, teaches people to disrespect Parliament. So some examples of rituals, as I mentioned before, Muslims pray 5 times a day. As Arian mentioned, there's the Sabbath, which I'll come back to. So what sort of things what sort of traditions have people been observing for thousands of years, and which we also observe? There's Christmas. We celebrate Christmas every year. And, it's a religious festival. It's Christ's Mass. It's a religious festival. Of course, people still celebrate the tradition of Christmas with presents and trees, even though people who don't go to church are becoming less and less familiar with less and less understanding what the meaning of it is. Yeah? And then if you lose sense of what the meaning is, it just becomes an empty tradition in that sense. Oh, it's just something we do, but, well, why do we do it? What's the meaning behind this ritual? And Easter again. Christians celebrate Easter, death and resurrection of Jesus for thousands of years. It's an incredibly important event within the Christian calendar and within the life of a Christian. So all these things, and a lot more as well, beside these, they're all based on the story of God's providence of salvation. Jews also celebrate Passover and Hanukkah and lots of other ones, Rosh Hashanah. So all these based upon a way of celebrating some event which took place in God's providence, and so because it's an event that took place in God's providence, it's connected to a story. And so we have the story of Christmas, the Christmas story. And so, when families and children go to church, then they reenact the nativity play. And there's a story which is passed on from generation to generation through these different traditions. And it's really important then for it to be child-friendly, that children should be able to get involved in some way. And then they have fun, they enjoy it, and then after a while they start to understand the meaning of it and the value of it, and then it gets passed on in this way. So religious ritual is a way of structuring time so that we, not employers, the market, or the media, are in control of life. Life needs its pauses, its chapter breaks, if the soul is to have space to breathe. And so that's what religious ritual does. It creates some kind of calendar. You can look at a religious calendar, whether it's a Christian or Jewish or Muslim or our own calendar. You can see there's a certain rhythm, certain cycles, and certain things that one observes and one does on particular kinds of days, which are not connected to what's going on in the rest of the world. It's a different kind of calendar, which is important to understand. So what rituals and traditions do we have? Anshil. When is that? every 8 days. How often do people observe it today? Good. Oh, good. Okay, quite a few people. It was much easier when it was every 7 days, because then, Sunday is a day where people don't go to school, or generally speaking, don't go to work. So it's much easier to celebrate and observe it on that day. Anything else?
Holy days.
Holy days, yeah. And so.
And also practice such as blessing and also ritual for dedicating children.
Right, so it had a book called the Tradition Book, and so it has some nice ones in there, such as the 8-day ceremony, dedication of children, and various other ones like that, which are... So those are ones which you find in our tradition, but do you think we should be incorporating these ones that have been going on for thousands of years as well?
Well, you do actually, don't you? Because you're praying. So prayer is not something new.
No, praying is not.
For thousands of years.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of these, as I said, a lot of these rituals then, or traditions, are connected to stories. So this is an English political philosopher I came across when I was at university. He said, I can only answer the question of what I am to do, what should I do today, or what should I do, if I can answer the prior question of what story or stories do I find myself a part. Deprive children of stories and you leave them anxious stutterers in their actions as in their words. Hence there's no way to give us an understanding of any society, including our own, except through the stock of stories which constitute its initial dramatic resources. So what are the dramatic resources? What are the stories that constitute and form the basis of our spiritual community? Father's life. Okay, if you think about the relationships within our spiritual community, what are the stories that are most prominent in what kind of things do people talk about, particularly in the past, in terms of the way our community is structured and organized and arranged? Cain and Abel? In the past, particularly, there was a lot of discussion. The Cain and Abel, that story, has been very influential in the way that our community sets itself up and functions in terms of relationships between people. Adam and Eve and Lucifer, it's again another kind of story which is very, very prominent in terms of understanding the relationship between men and women, all sorts of things are going on. And so, very often, Father especially would be referring over and over again to these stories to explain what he himself was doing in terms of the providence. And so these stories then are a very important part of who we are and our identity. It says here, I can only know what I am to do if I know what story I find myself a part. And so I remember there was an interview with, the first interview Prince William gave when he was a young man. I think just turned 21 or something. And the interviewer asked him, well, when did you realize that, one day you'll become the King of England? And he said, well, I used to go and see my granny from time to time. And I realized she lived in a much bigger house than anybody else, a palace. And she had quite a few of these palaces all around the country. And then I also noticed from time to time she'd be wearing a crown. Not just like, the paper ones we wear at Christmas, but a real one. And then I realized, oh, my granny is the Queen of England. Wow, isn't that amazing? My granny is the Queen of England. And I was really proud of that. My granny's the Queen. And then I realized that Granny's getting older, and that one day, God forbid, Granny will die. I wonder who's going to wear the crown after that. And so he thought, well, there's my dad, Charles, and there's Auntie Anne, and there's Uncle Andrew and Uncle Edward. And Dad's the oldest, so I guess Dad will become the king when Granny dies. That's amazing. My dad is going to be a real king one day. And then he figured, well, one day Dad will die as well. So who's there? Well, it's Harry and me, and I'm older than Harry, So I guess that one day I'll become the King of England. And he said as soon as he realized that, he understood what story he was a part of, the story of his family, he said suddenly all the doors closed except one. He had to prepare himself to become the future King of England. All the doors closed. He couldn't think, well, I'm going to be a journalist, I'm going to go and live here, I'm going to go and live there, I'm going to do this. All the opportunities and options that most people have suddenly disappeared, and there was only one door to walk through. Because then he understood who he was, because he understood what his place was in the story of his own family, and also his place in the story of the country. And then he thought, okay, I need to prepare myself for that when it comes around. That makes sense? The story is so important. When people think, oh, what should I do with my life? It's because they don't know who they are. And they don't know who they are because they don't know the story. They don't know the story. They don't know their part to play in this story. And when I heard the principle, the whole story of God's providence, understood the conclusion, understood who true parents were, then I felt, okay, all the doors shut. There's only one way to go, only one path to follow. So identity, which is always particular, we will have our own particular identities formed from all sorts of different sources, is based on story, the narrative that links me to the past and guides me to the present, and places on me responsibility of the future, which, as I said, that's how Prince William felt when he understood his place in the story, the past, the present, and the future. And no story is more influential than that of the Exodus, the memory that the supreme power, God, intervened in the history to liberate the supremely powerless. These are the Hebrew slaves in Egypt. Together with the covenant that followed, whereby the Israelites bound themselves to God in a promise to create a society that would be the opposite of Egypt, where individuals were respected as the image of God, and where one day in 7 all hierarchies of power were suspended, where the dignity and justice were accessible to all. That's a very long sentence. But yeah, this is an incredibly important occasion, event that took place in the life, not just of the Hebrews and the Jewish people, but also took place in the life... Oh, thanks. It's okay, and I've got a glass here, I just need to use it. And so, for about 1,600 years then, Jews have been celebrating this event, Passover. It's celebrated every day. It's a family-based occasion where they sit around the table, there's certain kinds of food, certain stories read out, and it's also very child-friendly. So it's an unusual occasion. The food they eat on that day is different. And then the youngest child, the youngest one, is encouraged to ask questions. Why on this night of all nights do we eat this food? Or why on this night of all nights do we sit in this way? And then the answer is given through a story. And it's the way in which the children are very involved in asking, why do we do this? Oh, well, we do it because this is what we always do. No. There's a reason why we're doing this. We're remembering what happened to us, not to us 1,400 years ago. It's not history, it's memory, which I talked about before. And so they inherit, in that sense, all the lessons that were learned. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you easily descend, you lose all the lessons from history, and you descend into creating a slave society oneself. The values of meaning identity are passed on, and also engender the gratitude to God for liberation and for freedom. Even though it was 1,400 years ago, this happened to me. God liberated and saved me. And then Easter also takes place round about a similar kind of time, because it's understood that Jesus was crucified round about the Passover time. And so again, it's something that Christians celebrate every year. And it's not family-based, it's church-based. So everybody goes to church because the priest is there, or ministers there serving communion. And again, of course, there's a story of the crucifixion and the resurrection. And how child-friendly it is. Well, you've got Easter eggs, and you've got other things like that, but it's not, I would say, as child-friendly in that sense as the Passover, the way that's celebrated. But still, through this, values and meaning and identity are passed on. you understand why we're Christians, that gratitude, of course, to God and Jesus for saving me. Focus here within Christianity is on salvation. Jews are more interested in liberation. So coming up to one of these things, I mentioned there, one day in 7, when all hierarchies of power suspended with the dignity and justice were accessible to all. So this is the Sabbath, which Arian mentioned. And this is what it says. He didn't make it, he just mentioned it. So this comes from Exodus, where it's just one of the passages about the Sabbath. Observe the Sabbath because it is holy to you. Holy means it's separate. It's not secular, it's different. It's a different day to all the other days where one goes to work. For 6 days, work is to be done. So work is a good thing. Work is really important. It's good and important to work for all kinds of reasons. But the 7th day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord. The Israelites should observe the Sabbath, celebrating for the generations to come as an everlasting covenant. It will be a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the universe and the earth, and the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. So that's the idea. God created the world in 6 days, and then he rested. I know it's metaphorical. So, well, if God takes a break and rests, then if we're in the image of God and we want to become like God, it means we also should rest. So who are the Israelites? Who are the Israelites? What is this relevant to us? Who are the Israelites?
It is us.
It's us. Father talks about the first Israel, the Jewish people, the second Israel, Christianity, and the third Israel is us. Okay, so this is an everlasting covenant given to us. Yeah? And so that's why it's something which we should be observing. So when Father talked about traditions which have existed for thousands of years, I was thinking, well, what kind of traditions are there that God created thousands of years ago, which have been observed by some people for thousands of years within our tradition? And I would say Sabbath is probably the most important. Because it says here, an everlasting covenant. It's not just for a few years or a few centuries, but it's an everlasting covenant forever. And then the question is, well, okay, so this then becomes a tradition, but then, well, why? Why did God establish this day of Sabbath? What language is the word Sabbath? Hebrew. Why is it not in English? There is no English equivalent. There's no equivalent to the word Sabbath in any other language in the entire world. Which is why Father also talks about Sabbath. There's no Korean word which has the same meaning as the word Sabbath. So this is the very first thing, the very first of the 10 commandments that God gave to the Israelites when they came out of Egypt. God didn't say to them, walk faster. He didn't say have more meetings. He said, rest on the 7th day. Collect the food for 6 days, and on the 6th day you collect twice as much. So on the 7th day you don't go out to work. You sit at home in your tent and you pray and you worship, you sing songs, you eat together, and you have a rest together. So why did God create the Sabbath? What's the meaning? Why did God create the Sabbath?
For us to remember God.
To remember God? Is that it? What is God's original ideal or vision for humanity? A family. Any particular kind of family? Yeah, parents and children, yeah, but any particular kind of... Anybody else fitting into that? God-centered family, that's right, yeah. God-centered family. A family where God will be present in the family. So if God's going to be present in the family, what do you need? You need to have a family, which means all the members of that family, in the same place, at the same time, on a regular basis. And then inviting God into that day. That makes sense? So, there's a thing. If you have an ideal, you have to think, how are we going to translate the ideal into reality? So the whole of the the whole of the Torah is about how to translate the ideal into reality. And one of the main ways is, well, the ideal is a God-centered family. So what structures you need to create a God-centered family? You need to create space regularly for the family to be together in the same place at the same time. And you can't do that if somebody's going out to work. That's why one day nobody goes to work, everybody's together. And then, within Judaism, obviously there's certain kind of rituals and ways of praying and everything. But the idea is that there's a space there for people to invite God to be present and make a special kind of meal. Nobody works, all the food is prepared the day before, all the washing up's done the day after. And it's this kind of day. And we're spent together as a family. So praying, worshipping, but also singing songs, playing musical instruments, forming a little band, playing games, board games, other games, going for walks, all these kind of things. And I said it's a family thing. And so you find within the Jewish community, even if Jews don't, there are lots of Jews, there are secular Jews that don't believe in God, but they still observe the Sabbath because it's a family thing, passed on from generation to generation. And so what else does it do? Well, obviously it gives everybody a rest, which you need, just for all kinds of reasons. You need to rest, otherwise you get burnt out if you're going to work every day. Secondly, as I said, it's an opportunity to create a God-centered family. It's a structure to be able to create that. It creates community. So going to work means you can't work. It means also you can't light a fire. So I had to define what is work. Well, lighting a fire is work. So, okay, so how do we stretch that into the modern world? Well, it means you can't drive a car because there's a spark. Okay, so if we can't drive cars, we can't use public transport, that means we all have to live within walking distance of each other. Also means that on the Sabbath, not only do the human beings have the day off, but farm animals have the day off as well. You can't work your horse or your donkey. It's a day off for everybody, including servants and, everybody else. And so it creates community. So if you have to be within walking distance of your community center, which for Jews is a synagogue, that means everybody's within walking distance of each other, which means they don't just meet up on a Sabbath, they also can meet up very regularly for all kinds of other activities. So a very simple rule then creates community. It's not a plan that, where everybody's going to live. It's just a simple rule, don't work. So if you don't mind walking a long distance, that's fine. Of course, nowadays, to the extent to which these rules are observed varies a lot between how religiously observant Jews are. But anyway, that's why it was given. That rule was given there. And so Jews have a saying, the Jews kept the Sabbath and the Sabbath kept the Jews. So that means because they observed the Sabbath over the generations, observing that preserved them as a community. So despite all the ups and downs in the life over the last 2,000 years, because they observed that, they still exist as a community. Because the tradition, and along with that, the education was passed on from generation to generation to generation. So it's not just observing the tradition. You have to, along with that comes the question, why are we doing this? And with that comes education. So it's not abstract education, let's go for a workshop and learn all these principles and all this history. It's education that's passed on through tradition, and then it becomes solid and substantial, and it creates culture, which is what Father said at the beginning, You get the two together, you create a culture. And so, when I look at our own spiritual community, sometimes I wonder, about the future. I worry about the future. How are we going to develop? What's going to be happening? And so the other thing is, you can get very stuck in one's tradition. This is what we've always done, that's why we always do it. And that's what happened in medieval Europe. And the Enlightenment came and people started questioning traditions. Okay, this is what we've always done from generation to generation, but why do we do it? Well, because we've always done it, because father did it, grandfather did it, great-grandfather. But why? Maybe there's a better way to plough this field than to do it the way we've always done it. And so with this came huge changes. And so that's the challenge then, how to maintain tradition and openness. Be willing to, and so this is something that we face, our own spiritual community faces. Our children, they go to these lovely summer camps and heart workshops, and they go off to university, they encounter all kinds of other ideas, and they think, well, okay, where do they end up often? Yeah, so it's a challenge for everybody. So this is Jonathan Sachs, who's someone I respect very much. Somebody commented upon what he was doing and thought, well, he's a chief rabbi, he must be incredibly orthodox and incredibly traditional. But actually found he wasn't. So throughout Jonathan Sachs's academic work, an apparent contradictory pattern emerges regarding the future role of Judaism. In this, he wishes for Judaism to encompass two separate ideals which initially appear to be paradoxical in nature. For he wants a faith to move away from the growing isolation as experienced in the modern world and impart its vast knowledge unto all others. Therefore, he wishes Judaism to be more open to society, to enable the creation of a reciprocal relationship with other faiths and ideas. However, this liberalization of the faith is counteracted by Sachs's equal desire to reinforce the practices and beliefs of Judaism. For the danger is that the knowledge held by the faith will be lost if Judaism abandons its traditions by compromising too much with the desires of the modern world. So that's these two poles, yeah? How to maintain, how to continue to be evolving and developing, while at the same time maintaining the essence of traditions that one has. And that is, that's a huge challenge for everybody, to be open but also maintaining a tradition. And I get a bit irritated by people, who want to teach the divine principle in the same way as they heard it 50 years ago. I think the world has changed. We need to teach it differently, because the people today are different to the people 50 years ago. So we need to be teaching the principle, but teach in a way that connects to, makes sense to people who are alive today. So rituals are how civilizations preserve their memory, keeping faith with those who came before us and handing on their legacy to the future. So one tradition we have is something called, now it's called bonfire night. Yeah, it used to be called fireworks. It used to be called Guy Fawkes night. And when I was a child, we used to get some old clothes and stuff it with straw. And then when November the 5th came around, this effigy of Guy Fawkes was put on top of the bonfire, and the bonfire was burned. And we all cheered as Guy Fawkes got burnt to death. You're not allowed to do that anymore. It's a microaggression. Or worse.
It's a macroaggression.
Macroaggression. But it has a meaning. This is entirely a spontaneous English celebration. Why? It's because there was this bloke called Guy Fawkes. He was a Catholic, and there was a lot of his friends, and they tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament when the King was there, so that Britain could become a Catholic country once again, which it wasn't. And the plot was discovered, and he was executed, hung, drawn, and quartered, along with his friends, which is a very unpleasant way of dying. And then people celebrated the fact that the gunpowder plot was discovered. And so to remember that, there's a song. Remember, remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason, and plot. Except that people no longer remember it. Now they just have a bonfire with fireworks, but nobody remembers the meaning, because it's politically incorrect to remember the meaning, even though today we're suffering a lot from the same issue. Gunpowder, which is explosive, treason, and plot. Conspiracies to, by religious fanatics, as they were then. It's the same problem today. Another thing is, it's not just for the country, it's also for a family. The single most important thing you can do for your family may be the simplest of all: develop a strong family narrative. This is the secret of happy families. A family narrative connects children to something larger than themselves. It helps them make sense of how they fit into the world that existed before they were born. It gives them a starting point of an identity, which is really important. That in turn becomes a basis of confidence. It enables children to say This is who I am. This is a story of which I am a part. These are the people who came before me and whose descendants I am. These are the roots of which I am the stem reaching upward towards the sun. So last Wednesday was my mother's, had she still been alive, it would have been my mother's 100th birthday party. So we had a birthday party to celebrate my mother's 100th birthday. So I ordered in some of her favorite food, which is Arab food from a Lebanese restaurant, because that's where she comes from. And she, when she was living in South Africa, she so missed Arab food that she went for a weekend to Dubai just so she could go and eat. She's a bit eccentric. Anyway, so I started off with a PowerPoint presentation of our family, Robert's family, and then, explain who they were, and then move back. Well, where did Robert come from? Robert came from Ruth and myself, and looked at our family. Okay, so where did I come? So another family photograph of me as a little boy with my parents and my sister. And then that's my mother, whose birthday we're celebrating today. Well, where did she come from? And so looked at pictures of my mother's parents, and when my mother was a little girl, and how she grew up. And then pictures of my mother's mother, obviously, my grandmother. Well, where did my grandmother come from? I had some more pictures showing who my grandmother's parents were. And then the last one was a picture of my grandmother's grandmother. So I added it up at 7 generations there, and telling the story of where they were born, where they came from, what kind of work they did, why they did what they did, or where they moved, and why they lived where they lived. And so I thought, well, that's interesting, just using little pictures, and then maybe they'll ask more questions when they get a bit older. And so I thought, okay, this is what it says. How am I going to do it? And that's the challenge. I've said all these things. Now think about it. How are you going to do it? Yeah, whenever Ariane probably knows, whenever I'm, interviewing someone who wants to go to the blessing, I always say, well, okay, what should you talk about with the person your prospective husband or wife? What kind of family do you want to create? Where's the starting point for the conversation? The family pledge. Do we want to create that kind of family? Yes or no? If yes, well, how do we want to do it? How do we want to embody these little sound bites, 3 great kingships, 4 realms of heart, etc., spirit world, physical world? How do we want to embody and put into practice all these little sound bites in our own family? How do we want to translate the ideal into a reality? And that involves structures, which means traditions, which means stories to support those traditions, so that you can initiate the next generation into the story, into the tradition, and into the community, and into their sense of who they are and how they should live their lives. Thank you very much. So I want to spend a few moments then just in prayer and reflection before Ariane comes back up. Thank you.
Arju. Once again, thank you, Pastor William, for such a wonderful message. There's a lot for us to be able to reflect on there in terms of how can our traditions really impact us, how can it help us to really become people that can become closer to God, and all these things that we know that we do and we practice, maybe we can reflect on it and think, actually, how does it actually change and shape my character? We are now going to move into our offering song, and I'd like to encourage you during this song to be able to come to the front and offer a donation into the bowl. We also have a card reader at the front, so if you do not have cash but would like to also donate something by card, please do so as well. And for those online, there is also a link in the description or bank details if you'd like to donate via bank transfer. So we are all going to sing "With a Story to Tell the Nations" as our offering song, so we can all please rise and let us sing together.
We've a story to tell to the nations that shall turn their hearts to the right. A story of truth and mercy, a story of peace and light, a story of peace and light. For the darkness shall turn to dawning, and the dawning to noonday bright, and Christ's great kingdom shall come on earth, the kingdom of love and light. We've a song to be sung to the nations that shall lift their hearts to the Lord, a song that shall conquer evil and shatter the spear and sword, and shatter the spear and sword. For darkness shall turn to dawning, and the dawning to noonday bright, and Christ's great kingdom shall come on earth, the kingdom of love and light. We've a message to give to the nations, that the Lord who reigns on above has sent us His Son to save us and show us that God is love, and show us that God is love. For darkness shall turn to dawning, and the dawning to noonday bright, and Christ's great kingdom shall come on earth, the kingdom of love and light. We've a Savior to show to the nations, through the path of sorrow and sorrow, and all of the world's great people might come to the truth of God, might come to the truth of God. Oh, the darkness shall turn to dawning, and the dawning to noonday bright, and Christ's great kingdom shall come on earth, the kingdom of love and light.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite our elder sister, Naomi, to offer the offering prayer.
Beloved Heavenly Father, our beautiful Lord and God, we are very grateful for all that you give us. And we are also very mindful of those people in the world who do not have this at this time, because we live in a time of sorrow and conflict and no peace in some countries. We ask that you guide us, that we use this money to help the lives of other people who are suffering, and that we can go out into the world and spread our message of peace. Thank you very much, Heavenly Father. we offer you this money and pray that you guide us to use it wisely. This I report and pray in the name of the Sato family. Amen. Arju.
Please be seated. Okay, so we're almost at the end of the service today. I'd like to just thank Uncle William for that message. I think there was a lot there. As I was listening to it, I thought I could listen to this 5 times and probably learn something new every single time. So yeah, there was a lot to unpack there, I think, in terms of how we can shape our identities in particular. That was one thing that stood out to me. So can we give him a round of applause for his message? And I'd like to thank the band as well. Very playful, joyful atmosphere I felt today from the music, so let's give them a round of applause. And thank you to Joseph at the back, taking care of the tech. He even put in my slides at the last moment, so let's give him a round of applause. And I'd also like to thank Bobby. He's keeping it humble, sitting at the back of the room, but he's been working on our Japanese curry throughout the service, so make sure to give him a hug and a kiss. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. Okay, so at this point in the service, sometimes if people would like to, if they're here for the first time in a while, you have the opportunity to come to the front and introduce yourself. So you don't have to, but if you'd like to, you may come up and share about who you are, what you're doing here, and yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So would anyone like to come up today? Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Noriko, just moved from Japan. So because my husband lived here for a long time in London, so I managed to come here by bus, change the bus. Then I managed to come here. I'm very happy to feel happy about it. So I'm very glad to meet you today. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for introducing yourself, Noriko. We're very happy to have you here. We try to make Japanese curry every month or so, so I hope you feel at home. And I guess we can finish off. Can I invite Uncle William to give a benediction prayer? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming. And yeah, now you understand why last Sunday's sermon was very short and this one's very long, because I got a bit out of balance there. Okay, so let's just pray. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, we thank you so much that we are able to spend this time together, worship you through song, through prayer, and through fellowship. We're so grateful for all the many blessings you give us, and we want to bless you and thank you, because we are so grateful for our life, for our health, for our families, for our friends, and for this country in which we're living. We really want to live our lives so we can change the world in which we're living through the way in which we live our own lives. We pray, Heavenly Parent, for your blessing upon the community here, and for their families back home, and for everybody who's also been watching online, and for all the people who have been attending church in many different places and many different denominations throughout this country and throughout this world today. We pray that you'll bless them in every single way, and they can work together to make peace with each other and peace with people of other faiths and other nationalities as well. And we pray, Heavenly Parent, for peace in so many places in the world where there's so much war and conflict. And I think especially of what's going on in Ukraine, and the terrible suffering that's taking place there, and also in Russia, and terrible things that are going on in the relationships between families on both sides of the border. And also pray for the situation in Israel and Palestine, particularly Gaza, and the incredible suffering there, that people can come to their senses to understand who they are and what it is that they're doing, and realize that maybe they need to change the story which has been passed on. So instead of a story of conflict, they can change it to a story of reconciliation and peace. And so the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Our Jude. Amen.